And I will have some of these videos posted. I had a little bit of trouble posting them, but that has been solved as of last night. So all of these clips will be available. This next lesson is, they're just going to go rapid fire. Little chunks. You're going to have 2 this morning. And last week we talked about Paul's conversion from a public enemy number 1. And now God does not waste any time. Paul's commission. And at the same time, really, Paul gets his marching orders. But let's talk about this. Number 1, it takes as much schooling to be a pastor as it does to be a doctor. Yeah. Some people argue that you have to go through a fellowship if you want to be a surgeon, and sometimes they even longer series. Well, some pastors go back for their masters in sacred theology or whatever too. So the schooling is kind of a lot, and some people say, why would you ever do that? And honestly, this might sound crazy, but it didn't seem like it was that much. Because when you're in college, they already have you working, even more than what I did. You're already doing ministry. And so you're kind of going to school and then doing that too. Then you get to the seminary, it just didn't seem that long. I look back on it now. I know I'm 42 and I'm getting old, but it's like a blur. It's not that long, guys. It can seem that way, I know, but yeah, all right. 2, God would save Saul from his own people. True or false? Yeah, this is kind of scary. I thought about, how could I compare this? It's like if you were in a room full of Viking fans, and they all turned on you. I could see that happening, I suppose, if I put on a Packer shirt or something. But I don't know. Maybe it's more like soccer in Europe, they do that, right? We're nicer. 3, Timothy was one of the 12 apostles. That is false. That is false. You're going to learn who Timothy is in a little bit of detail. The city of Lystra held a barbecue in Paul's honor. How's your Acts history? This is actually true. Didn't go that well, but you'll see what happens here. And not exactly. He was more the what you call it when you throw the cornhole. He was the object of cornhole at the end. It's getting crass, but all right. I think the sound desk is ready for this video, I hope.
I have appeared to appoint you as a servant and as a witness of what you have seen of me and what I will show you. I will rescue you from your own people and from the nations. I am sending you to them to open their eyes and turn them from darkness to light, and from the power of Satan to God. For I am commanding that you bring salvation to the ends of the earth.
All right. Who gave Saul the right to speak on God's behalf? Again, this is Acts 26. This is the end of his life as he's recounting it. If you just read the chunk in Acts that is his conversion, you don't have all these details. Paul retells this, I think, 4 or 5 times.
Now get up and stand on your feet. I have appeared to you to appoint you as a servant and as a witness of what you have seen of me and what I will show you.
This is an important part. Who gave Paul the right to do this? God. Next, who gives us the right to speak on God's behalf? This is also important.
Who gave man his mouth? Who makes him deaf or mute? Who gives him sight or makes him blind? Is it not I, the Lord? Now go. I will help you speak and will teach you what to say.
That is actually a burning bush plant. There was such a thing. I don't know if you knew that. And so who is God speaking to? This is Moses. Do you know what Moses' response is in verse 13? Do you remember? That was before. Mary said, I don't have eloquence of speech. He said that, and then God goes on this little sermonette. Are you kidding me? I'm the one who gives you the ability to talk. After this, do you know what Moses said? Please, Lord, send someone else. If you're like, Moses, you can't, what are you doing? There's a burning bush right in front of you. What? You don't argue. The correct answer is yes. So, yeah. You should say yes to God when he calls. But that's what happens. So if you ever feel afraid, just say, Moses was in the same boat at one point. You'll be okay. Yeah, God gives you the right to speak is the point. Because what happens if you speak to a friend about a spiritual issue? What might happen to that friendship? It could be at least rattled, stressed, or destroyed. It could happen. But that's okay. It's worth the risk. Your friend is worth the risk. So is that friendship. All right, this is the next chunk. I think this is a minute and a half.
Paul, we should turn back. Paul, we should stick to places we know are safe. Remember what happened the first time in Lystra? They tried to kill you.
Yes, Timothy. The people left me for dead, but God never left me.
But others have died. James, Stephen.
God never left them either. You know what the Lord commanded us. I made you a light for the Gentiles, that you may bring salvation to the ends of the earth. He will decide our next move.
What was Paul doing for 18 years? You guys know this part? This is not in Acts. This is Galatians.
For you have heard of my previous way of life in Judaism, how intensely I persecuted the church of God and tried to destroy it. But when God called me by his grace, I did not consult any man, but I went immediately into Arabia and later returned to Damascus. Then after 3 years, I went up to Jerusalem to get acquainted with Peter and stayed with him 15 days. Later, I went to Syria and Cilicia. 14 years later, I went up again to Jerusalem, this time with Barnabas. I took Titus along also. I went in response to a revelation and set before them the gospel that I preach among the Gentiles.
Yeah. A lot happened. So if you were an apostle of Jesus, you had 3 years of seminary training with him. If you were the Apostle Paul, when did you have seminary training with Jesus? Arabia. Yeah, that's all we know about that. There's more to Paul, and we'll get into it later in the series. Chunks of the video accentuate it, but yeah. Paul had 18 years, and he's already a full-grown rabbi teaching, leading. He's not a young man. My point is, it's okay to retool, to learn more. And I know some people, it's like a graduation syndrome you have where you just want to get done with college. School's out for it, you know. But school, yeah, you're looking at me, Jess just graduated from college. Yeah, that's okay, but as a Christian, this doesn't end. It's kind of fun. Yeah? School's not, Jess, I know, but yeah, it's expensive too. But I don't know who sings that song, Ed. Is that Alice Cooper? I just sung Alice Cooper in a Bible class. Yes. Yes. Every day you do learn something new. There's parts of the Bible that are shallow. Luther called it a river. Certain parts you can kick and frolic, and certain parts will go over your head so quickly. And you do learn something new. Yeah. So that's my encouragement, not to give up study. And it's not that long, really, right? All right, this Timothy guy who looks so worried. What's his deal? First of all, this is where he came from.
He came to Derbe and then to Lystra, where a disciple named Timothy lived, whose mother was a Jewess and a believer, but whose father was a Greek. The brothers at Lystra and Iconium spoke well of him.
Yeah, and what did Paul think of this kid? He's mentioned a lot, I think 10 times in Paul's letters.
For this reason I am sending to you Timothy, my son, whom I love, who is faithful in the Lord.
And Timothy gets not 1 but 2 epistles to himself, too. The pastoral epistles, Titus and Timothy. Very well written, and it's a gold mine for pastors, too, as Paul writes advice to these young pastors. All right, what happened in Lystra? This is the barbecue cookout.
When the crowd saw what Paul had done, they shouted in the Lycaonian language,
"The gods have come down to us in human form!"
Barnabas they called Zeus, and Paul they called Hermes because he was the chief speaker. The priest of Zeus, whose temple was just outside the city, brought bulls and wreaths to the city gates because he and the crowd wanted to offer sacrifices to them.
How's it going? Not bad. Well, so Paul walked in, someone was crippled, Paul heals him, he does that, and then they go nuts. They're pagan, and they think Zeus and Hermes just showed up. Paul talks more, he must be Hermes. Barnabas, not so much, he's probably Zeus. Okay? But if you're Paul and Barnabas, do you want them to think that you're pagan gods and sacrifice to you? No. So you have a beautiful sermon by Paul that I don't include. You just have what Timothy's talking about.
Even with these words, they had difficulty keeping the crowd from sacrificing to them. Then some Jews came from Antioch and Iconium and won the crowd over. They stoned Paul and dragged him outside the city, thinking he was dead. But after the disciples had gathered around him, he got up and went back into the city.
Okay, that's a bad way to end the barbecue. But at the very end, after you're stoned and almost dead, what do you normally not do? Go back into the city where they just stoned you, yeah. Usually I would probably think twice about doing that. You talk about guts. Paul went right back in, which is... So you can understand why Timothy's a little bit, buddy, the first time you went to Lystra, remember what happened? And Paul's like, Timothy, come on. Was Timothy right to be afraid? This is the final question. Yeah. Yeah. I think he was. But, so what I'm saying, I guess I've heard more than you, but I hear stories from mission fields, and it can be dangerous. It's not always, and our church body tries very hard to protect missionaries. 24-hour support where it's expensive, but they can send in someone to medevac a child or a person out if something happens. They have armed guards, walls with barbed wire around their compounds. It is dangerous, but the work is still very important. Any questions about that? Otherwise, oh, sorry, yeah. Elise. Well, she's free. Okay, Elise, go. Yeah. Yeah, Paul's around. Not like the disciples. I think he was just kind of a Jew who was hanging around. He was a Pharisee. I don't know that he was a member of the Sanhedrin. That's never said. Oh, yeah. Yeah. And then, of course, he got knocked off his horse. But, yeah. Charlotte. It's a great question. How many missionaries does our denomination have? I don't know off the top of my head. It's not as many as we used to. Budgetary cuts have cut our home and world mission fields. This was a home mission field for the 16 years I was here. What, guys, 10 years we were a mission church? Kevin, do you remember? Something like that? So, yeah. I will find that out because this is an ongoing The Acts 16 is where we take off and go. That's easier because on our church body's website, they list all the countries. And they don't list as much detail as you might like because some of them are communist, and there is some danger that they don't want people to know about. Specifically China and how we're working there. But by all means, keep it in. That's why the Vietnam, you saw that, was it November in the Wells Connection? How they're inviting us to build a seminary and nobody else, and we're the only Christian church in Vietnam. That's, as I have a neighbor who says, a God thing. That's pretty awesome. So, that's cool. Good questions. Anybody else? Please say this prayer with me. Father, bless us as we go into your word for comfort and training. Let your Spirit convince us every day of your love for us. May he move us to do your will. Hear us for Jesus' sake. Amen. There are no other announcements. May God give you all a safe trip home. Oh, and two things. We should really sing. Yes, we really should, because Elise is here, and it's her birthday, and she doesn't really want me to, so it's too late now. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Elise. Happy birthday to you. And Elise also just wanted me to kind of throw out there, does anyone happen to know anything about the liners that the flowers sat in? Because people, what we do is you can order flowers and then people take them home. If you took home one of the liners, the black liners, those are kind of hard to come by. And but if you have one at home, maybe just bring it back. It's okay. But we're out. So, all right. Have a blessed week.